was here for a Ghanatube, so much for snowy. Mamma Quaba and a bachelor way, so Martina say, dear. Now, then, some I would draw I coso, ever or many more elbow. Now, so we know and quino, and Jaffonity, Dimechi, Nankoti, Simbia, El Coso.
In an unprecedented move today, the President, John Dramani Mahama, acting on the advice of the Council of State, suspended the Chief Justice. It's never happened before. This is the first time we're seeing this happen in the Fourth Republic, where a sitting Chief Justice has been suspended by the President on the advice of the Council of State. And so, as you can imagine, it has been a major news day as far as this is concerned. There's a lot still to unpack. You're at the right place. This is PMX, so that's exactly what we're going to do for you. The first thing the President did once the decision was taken and announced that the Chief Justice has been suspended was to form a 5-member committee. The task is simple. They will now investigate and give a hearing to the Chief Justice to come before them and answer to the 3 petitions that have now been put before them asking for her removal. They will interrogate the basis and the grounds. She will now have an opportunity, either by herself or with an expert or a lawyer of her choice, to put in the defense. Now, the 5 members of this committee, 2 of them are her own colleagues on the bench at the Supreme Court. And of course, they were her subordinates on the bench. She administratively would empanel and appoint some of them today going forward. 2 of them, one of course the chairman in this case, Justice Gabriel Skopama. You know him, the former General Secretary of the PNC. He himself had a lot of controversy around his appointment, but he is the chair appointed by the President to oversee the investigations into the 3 petitions before them. He is going to chair that committee. He's also called Supreme Court Justice and appointed by John Dramani Mahama. And I remember when his appointment was first put forth, it was very controversial because of his political background. Well, he became a Supreme Court judge and has since been there, and he will chair this. He is going to be supported by another justice of the Supreme Court. In this case, Adibu Asiedu, Justice Samuel Kwame Adibu Asiedu, who will support him in evaluating the evidence thoroughly before them. And as you know, and see on the smart wall there, he was appointed by former President John Agyekum Kufuor, and of course he's been there since that time, and of course has been very instrumental in some of the very important cases. He was appointed then way back to the High Court and climbed all the way to the Appeals Court, to the Supreme Court, and is going to be the 2nd justice. Now, you know, this other member of the committee, the Supreme Court, is obviously now a subject of a lot of controversy because the head of the judiciary itself has been suspended. It's never happened before, at least in the Fourth Republic. And so you can imagine those 2 justices will have a lot to say, but there's a lot that their own reputations will now have to sort of sift through, and will have to weigh the outcome and the evidence. Will have to weigh, because they are the judges. They know how to evaluate the evidence. But this man here, Daniel Yardemolovo, you know him, he is the former Auditor General. He himself was subject to a very controversial removal by the previous president, Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. And guess what? At the time when the president asked him to proceed on leave, when civil society fought it, they went to the Supreme Court. When they went to the Supreme Court, they filed to challenge it. And I remember then the Supreme Court, according to the civil society groups that went there, including CDD, accused the Supreme Court of delaying in empaneling judges to hear that particular matter. Eventually, when they empaneled and the case was called, it was a moot point because he had already been removed from office and it was inconsequential. But of course, the decision came in at the time, it was too late, right? Interestingly, he is now going to sit in judgment of the Chief Justice. Bottom line, that's what it's going to be. He will be weighing, together with the 4 others, whether or not there is enough basis in the 3 petitions to remove the Chief Justice. How fascinating that will be. And Daniel Yardemolovo comes to this with impeccable track record indeed, doing a fantastic job as a member of the Oral Preparatory Committee, again put together by John Dramani Mahama. But his work really shot to national fame when he was the Auditor General. You know, he really set the pace when it comes to surcharges. Civil society accepted him. He really was one no-nonsense Auditor General, embraced by all. Even the former government embraced him at the beginning. They praised him for the work that he's done, exposing $5 billion worth of corruption that was tied to the previous administration. Just when he began to now do his work, as many will now point to, that also begin to touch some very important appointees of the previous administration, he came under a lot of criticism. Eventually, he had to bow out because the president said, well, you've reached your retirement age and you needed to go. And so he went. Now, he is a member of this committee. It's going to be fascinating indeed. Also considering his own background recently with the oral committee that was set up, a manifesto promise implemented with him as a member of this particular committee. Well, the minority side raised questions about his membership of this particular committee. We'll see how this pans out. And then we know very little of this associate professor, but he's also a member of this particular committee. Professor James Efajisa has been appointed also on this committee. He is a Department of Sociology, University of Ghana, and he is also going to be part of the 3 non-lawyers who are also not members of the Council of State, who will be helping the 2 Supreme Court judges evaluate the evidence before them. And then there's a final individual we know very little of indeed, but we know that he is a member of the Ghana Armed Forces, a very senior member at that. Major Flora Dalugo will also be part of this evaluation. It's been 28 days since, as we know, the Council of State petition went there to evaluate it, and they've been considering this, and the decision was made today. The prima facie case has been made, and so the Chief Justice should be suspended whilst the process goes ahead. And it's traveled a fair bit. He first went to the petition submitted phase. This is all according to the Constitution, by the way. And then also Council of State now determined the prima facie, which has happened today. The President, obviously, once this happens, has a few options. He can set up this committee, which is done, and that, by the way, is a must. But what the Constitution gives him a discretion to do, which means he can choose not to, is to suspend the Chief Justice. He's chosen to exercise that discretion in favor of a suspension, right? That in itself is a contested matter. We'll get my colleagues, my panelists to weigh in on that when we sit for a conversation. And then 5, the committee now will submit a recommendation to him. And once they submit, he's obliged to follow the recommendations as submitted by the committee. And then at the time, if they say she will be removed at the time. Indeed, the minority have issued a strongly worded statement 3 hours ago in which they accuse the president of, in fact, supervising a coup, a brazen political coup, judicial coup, overthrowing the Chief Justice. They say it is a political vendetta against the judiciary, and that the NDC wants to pack the courts with their own people. And they were very clear that they will resist this with everything they have. In fact, they've suggested tonight that there will be protests, public protests, if the president doesn't do 2 things. 1, if he doesn't reinstate the Chief Justice, and if he does not suspend the process currently ongoing to remove her. Okay, we'll sit for a conversation pretty shortly on this particular matter, because as you know, it is a very controversial one today. We haven't seen this before, so you can imagine. But
comment box no for comment ebra na menjebre enkinkan ema answer na message mo so me kan mo say aha Ghanatube. So subscribe, hit on the notification bell for more updates. See you, Mahama.